Again, welcome and thank you for joining our webinar today. We're going to be together for the next 45 minutes. We appreciate you taking the time to join our webinar on protecting your estate from a health crisis. My name is Myra Medina. I'm an estate planning paralegal for the Kopenbarger and Kopenbarger law firm. Your presenters today are Robert Galliano and Charles Sosa. Robert is one of 8 attorneys within our firm. Robert has a master's in taxation, is a certified specialist in probate, estate planning, and trust law by the State Bar of California, and is a VA accredited attorney. Robert has helped hundreds of families over the years protect themselves from nursing home poverty, probate, estate litigation, and much more. We also have the pleasure of having Charles Sosa, the Chief Executive Officer of Lifestyle Financial. Charles has been in the financial industry for over 10 years. He enjoys helping clients find solutions to their various financial issues and watching their hard work pay off. Charles has a degree in finance and economics and holds a Series 7 and 66 securities, life, health, and long-term care insurance licenses. Now, I'll hand it over to Robert Galliano.
Thank you, Myra. Today, we're going to be covering a very important topic, and that is protection of your estate from the high cost of illnesses or things that can happen as we get older. And we're going to address what the top concerns are for seniors and what the statistics are as to how prevalent it is for us to get sick or ill. And we're going to talk about the cost of care in California, which has been increasing dramatically over the last few years. And more important, we're going to discuss how you can pay for long-term care or for the care of your loved one at home. And then Charles, our special guest, is going to talk to you about long-term care insurance, and then we will tell you how we can help you. So we are really delighted to have you with us to go over this very important subject. The top concerns for seniors. Believe it or not, as we get older, as all of us know, we get gray hairs. Today, we're living much longer due to science and all of the health inventions that are occurring. We can have a heart replacement, lung replacement, and so forth. And the problem as we get older is that some of these illnesses may be very devastating. And therefore, when we start to think about what are we really worried about? Well, if you look at the chart, dying is at the bottom of the list because there's not very much things that we can do about not wanting to die. Then on the top of the list, you have becoming ill. And this is something as we get older, we face. And part of becoming ill may be losing our memory. And definitely we never want to become a burden to our family. And another really serious concern is something that you may want to talk to Charles about is outliving your money. But today we're going to be focusing on taking care of our estate from really devastating illnesses. And that is going to be the topic today. But I do encourage you to reach out to Charles if you're really concerned about outliving your money. How do we become a burden on our family? Well, it's obvious. Financially, if you have an illness, for example, that you cannot pay for, you have hospital bills that you cannot pay for, or you get in a situation where you have enough savings or you didn't plan properly to pay for these devastating illnesses, then you may wind up being financially dependent upon your family. I know none of you want to be dependent upon your children, but that's a possibility. And this is something that I know that is a major concern as we get older. And as I said, some of these illnesses that we may be subject to are definitely a cause of becoming a burden on our family, because a lot of times when we become ill, it's a natural reaction for the family to offer to come to our support. Children may come to our home to take care of us if they live nearby. I have, for example, a daughter who just left California to go and help a relative in Kansas to take care of that person during these last bouts of illness that she has. And also, a lot of times we cannot take care of ourselves. Maybe we're not ill with a devastating illness, but we're unable to really care for ourselves, unable to bathe properly. Maybe we're unable to drive anymore. So there are many, many ways that we can become a burden on our family. And the statistics are devastating. They really are, because any of us who will go into the internet and just start looking at statistics, it's just unbelievable what is happening. I have some statistics here on the screen, and basically one statistics that I have lived with for many, many years, and that is that if you get over the age of 65, 70% of us are going to wind up needing some form of care. Now, that does not necessarily mean going into a nursing home, but it may mean somebody to take care of you at home, or maybe assisted living. So the percentage of the possibility as we age is really great that we may need some form of care. Alzheimer's disease, for example, has increased by over 46% as a cause of death. So the reality is, as we get older, science is keeping us alive. And as we get older, our body is a machine, and parts of the machine are going to break down. And therefore, this is what puts us in a situation that we need to do some planning to avoid a health crisis devastating the estate that took us a lifetime to accumulate. Another interesting fact is the average cost of care in a skilled nursing facility has increased over the years and is expected to continually increase. Women are more likely to require long-term care. The average length of stay in a skilled nursing facility is roughly about 2.5 years. So the statistics are against us as we live longer. The challenge really is, as we get older, the rise of age-related illness that can last for many, many years. How do we protect our estate to any of a loss due to this illness and incapacity? How do you do that? None of us can predict if we're going to become ill or not. But if we become ill, how do we protect our estate from loss due to this illness or incapacity? How do we find the right care? And more importantly, how do we find a way to pay for this care that we may need? Let's review the cost of care in California. The cost for long-term care, as I said earlier, will be the greatest threat to your home and financial resources, because if we become ill, if we have the unfortunate situation where we become ill due to any catastrophic illness that may come our way, we can't predict that. We can't control that. And if that happens, there may be a threat to our estate if we haven't really planned for this particular threat. The average cost over the last 5 years has been 3 to 4% annually, the increase in care. Last year alone, the cost of long-term care increased by 7.5%. Can you imagine? And that does not take into consideration the inflation costs that we're experiencing today. So cost of care is increasing at an alarming rate. As we live older, we're more subject to the possibility of an illness that can threaten our estate. And just to give you an idea of what the costs are, if you look on the top of the chart, you're going to see care type, then we have monthly cost, then we have the annual cost. So looking down the left side of the screen, care type, home health aid, over $6,000 a month. Homemaker, same thing, over $6,000 a month. I personally have experienced the expense of having a home health aide come to the house. My wife became ill several years ago, and I had to hire a home health aide. And the cost at that time, I thought was humongous, and that was over $5,000, and now it's over $6,000 a month. Assisted living can cost you over $5,000 a month. Nursing home. Now, none of us ever want to go into a nursing home. That is absolutely a given. That's an absolute 100% certainty. None of us ever want to go into a nursing home. However, there are circumstances where we wind up in a nursing home. And if you don't think people wind up in a nursing home, visit a nursing home, you're going to see that it is full of people. None of them wanted to be there, but the fact is that some of us may wind up in a nursing home situation. And then the cost of a nursing home semi-private, that means maybe 2 or 3 people in a room, is close to $10,000 a month. If you want a private room in a nursing home, it's over $12,000. So if you wind up in a situation with a severe illness that puts you in the nursing home situation, you're going to be expending over $100,000 a year to take care of that loved one. Generally, when we become ill, it's in a sequence, meaning that we start off maybe with home care. Then as we get more ill, family members may not be able to take care of us, so then we wind up in assisted living. And then some people progress them from assisted living, they wind up in a nursing home. So it's kind of a care is kind of like an increasing progression of the type of care that we need, and it is long-term. So how do you pay for long-term care? Where does the money come from? Just take the extreme example, for example, of winding up in a nursing home for a year. Let's just take a simple number of $100,000 a year. Are you going to pay for that out of your monthly income? Are you going to deplete your savings? Do you have savings for this? Are you going to sell your home? Should you sell your home? Are you going to ask your family, your children, maybe your brothers, your siblings? Or have you looked into getting long-term care insurance? So when we look at the ways that we're going to pay for long-term care, none of them are really palatable, except there's one option that all of you should look into, and that is long-term care insurance. And that is why today we are fortunate to have Charles with us to talk to you about long-term care insurance. So I'm now going to turn it over to Charles. All right, Charles.
All right, so I'm going to go over long-term care insurance, and we're going to talk about this and then in the next slides. So long-term care insurance and health insurance can sometimes get confused together, but they're very different. And so, your normal health insurance is for when you go to the hospital and like short-term things. But after they've done the major corrective action, so if you break a leg or something, they repair the leg, but you're still not ambulatory, you still need care, that's where you would look at something like long-term care, because it goes beyond the medical care and includes all the assistance that you would need. So if it's whether it's a disability or a chronic illness that leaves you, unable to really take care of yourself for a period of time. And so they help you with all the different things you need to do, whether it's feeding yourself, bathing, clothing, all those things. And so it is a really valuable resource because it allows loved ones to supervise you. And so as we age and we eventually need help or care, a lot of people and a lot of our clients come to us and they say, well, we don't want to be a burden on our children, but we also don't want to leave our home. And so long-term care is one of those nice things that allows you to stay in your home and then have someone come in and take care of you as you need that additional help as you age, but it also allows that to occur while your children can supervise and just make sure that you are being taken care of well. And so there are many reasons that you could need long-term care, whether it's the aftermath of a stroke, um, dementia, Alzheimer's, complications with diabetes or other chronic conditions. And just because you start using long-term care doesn't mean you'll be on it for the rest of your life. Some people use it for a short period and then will recover. For instance, we had a client who broke their hip and they needed to utilize their long-term care insurance policy for a period of time, and then they were able to recover and start taking care of themselves again. And they tapered off of it, but it is valuable, and there are many different reasons why you might end up utilizing it. And so one of the questions I get asked is where can I receive care? If I have a long-term care policy, do I have to go to a skilled nursing facility? And the answer is no. I mean, generally, most policies provide provisions in there where you can get care at your own home, inside an assisted living facility, at a community facility offering services, or a skilled nursing facility. So the nice thing is you have a lot of options, because some people would prefer to stay in their home, other people prefer to move to a community facility, and others just prefer the skilled nursing facility, but it just depends. But the nice thing is to have as many options afforded to you, and then you can pick the choice that best suits your needs at that time. Now, there's a couple different ways to really fund your long-term care plan. And so you can use just straight traditional long-term care insurance. And what I mean by that is just a straight policy. Now, some of the drawbacks of long-term care insurance is that it is expensive. There's no way around it, because the odds of you utilizing this insurance are high, and the insurance companies know that. There's also a window of time. So generally between 55 and 65 is the sweet spot, where you can usually pick up a policy at a reasonable price. Now, as you get beyond 65, it just becomes harder and harder to get a policy. And then if you're below 55, you're really just not quite old enough where you really need a policy, and it may be a little bit premature. Now, if it's difficult for you to qualify for a long-term care policy for whatever reason, sometimes you can get a life insurance policy with a long-term care rider. Now, what a rider is it's effectively an option that would extend certain long-term care benefits to you in the event that you needed the skilled nursing care. And then there's also a combination of products that have long-term care benefits. Some annuities offer it, some other investments offer it. And so really it's just looking at seeing what options are available to you and what the best way to get the long-term care is for your specific situation and your health. Now, what are the next steps? So really having that conversation with your family about your objectives, how you see yourself, your journey going, and what you would really like. And so whether your preference is to stay at home, whether you want to go to a assisted living facility, and after you've had that conversation with your family, speaking with us, so that way we can help you create a written plan, and then find out what the coverage costs in your area. So if you want to stay in the state, or if you're looking to go to a certain area, we can start having that discussion where we can see exactly what it would cost, and then see what size of a policy you would need in order to provide benefits that it would cover what you're looking to accomplish. And then the last step is seeing if you medically qualify. Now, if other forms fail, so we talked about the long-term care insurance. Now there's another step we can use. So if, let's say you don't qualify, we can do what they call Medi-Cal planning. Now, what a Medi-Cal plan is it's basically advanced legal planning that's designed to protect your assets. And so what it does is it protects your assets, so that way it speeds up the qualification process and avoids a spend down. So a spend down is when you have to exhaust all of your personal assets except for X amount of dollars in order to qualify for Medi-Cal. It also protects against state recovery. So the state being able to go after your estate and recover some of the costs after you pass away. And also spouses. It provides a lot of protection for your spouses because otherwise, if one spouse is in a assisted care facility and the other spouse is still living at home, you effectively have more than twice the cost of a normal home, and you have a very difficult situation. And I had a client who was a multimillionaire. They had very significant assets, and they did not have long-term care insurance. And you have a situation where the spouse who was in the long-term care facility was costing $12,000 a month, and month in, month out. And they also had to take money out of their investments to satisfy their own cost of living. And so that really added up after a while. And so what you end up with is a situation where now the surviving spouse is in an impoverished state, and it can add up really quickly because the spouse was healthy, thank God. But now you're in a situation where they were in a long-term care facility for 7 years. Now, luckily, we saw this issue coming, and so we started doing some Medi-Cal planning with them about a year into this journey when we started outlining some of the issues. But it is preferable to get this taken care of in advance of needing long-term care rather than having I call it emergency planning, where things are already in motion, because then the amount of options that are available to us are seriously limited. And last but not least is inheritance to children. So this is important to some people more than others, and everybody has their own goals and objectives. It is, after all, your money. You've worked very hard for it, but some people do want to leave a legacy for their children. And, in the event that you do get sick and you do need the long-term care, being able to protect those assets so that way you can pass it on to your kids is important to people. And that's another thing that the Medi-Cal plan can help you accomplish. And the other thing is, not having the long-term care planning is just going to result in a drawdown of the investments. And so, not to use it, I'm not trying to scare anybody, but the costs of these facilities are going up. The cost of gas has gone up a little bit. I think everybody can agree right now. And going to the grocery store, everything is getting more expensive right now. And if you don't think that the cost of inflation is not going to be passed on in long-term care costs, you're sadly mistaken, because these costs are continuing to go up. The cost for long-term care policies is going to continue to go up as things get more expensive. And so it's really important to plan, because regardless of what's happening in the market, you're still going to need to pay for these expenses. And right now, the market's tumultuous. It's not exactly the best time to be pulling out large amounts of money from an investment portfolio. And the long-term care policy or the Medi-Cal planning is going to allow you to protect or have a policy that pays some of these benefits to help shield you from these costs, because you don't want to be self-insuring yourself. I would very much so recommend against that.
Thank you so much, Charles. So you may be asking yourself, who should I refer? Who would benefit from this? Pretty much everyone. Yourself, family members, friends, neighbors, people from your church. We don't know what will happen in the future. Typically, we get insurance because we don't know what will happen. And this is something important. This is something that can happen to everyone. We may need this care, and planning for it and having options is important. And that's what we're trying to convey, is that you have options, either by doing long-term care planning or getting some type of a insurance policy like Charles mentioned. So what's important is for you to reach out to us. So how do you contact us? How do you connect with us or book an appointment? So we have a couple of different ways. You can either call our 800 number. You can send your information, name, phone number on the chat box. You can also find us on the web, and any kind of questions you'll have, we'll be able to either set up an appointment with one of our attorneys for the planning or set you up an appointment with Charles's company. So either way, it's important that you get the information, that you get the knowledge needed to make an informed decision of your future. So for now, if any of you have any questions regarding this, please find the Q&A chat box and type in your questions, and Robert and Charles will be able to answer those for you. And again, just so you know, we will be recording this webinar is being recorded, so you can always go back to it and share this with any of your loved ones. So we'll just give it some time and see if we have anybody interested or anybody who has a question here.
At this point, Myra, I do not see any questions, but I do want to encourage everybody to look at this webinar again by going to our website, because this is a very complex subject. And the more you hear, the more you see, the more you think about this, I think it's going to make you focus as to something that you may want to accomplish and do. So I do encourage everybody to go to our website and look for this particular webinar. Now, I do have a question, and this is something that Charles can answer. And the question is, Charles, how do they get a hold of you? How do they contact you?
Basically, you just send your information to the info@copenbarger.com, or you can call the Copenbarger phone number and say that you had attended the long-term care webinar and that you would like lifestyles information, or Charles lifestyle, and they'll be happy to transfer you to us or give you our information.
And Charles, you are now on the hotspot because all the questions are coming over to you. And the next question is, what is the average cost of long-term care?
Oof. Average cost of a long-term care policy, or just long-term care?
I think the question is average cost of long-term care, but then the next question is, what is the cost of long-term care policies?
Average cost of long-term care really depends on where you get your long-term care. And so I've seen facilities range from, on the lower end, $8,000 a month, and I've seen upwards of $14,000 a month. And so there are different facilities at different price points in different areas and locations. If you want a place by the beach where you have a beautiful view and a huge room, it's going to be more expensive. If you want a place in a less desirable area, or in like the Midwest, it's going to be cheaper. But no matter where you go or where you decide to stay, it is quite expensive, and it's only going to get more expensive. And then as far as the long-term care policy itself, I hesitate to throw out numbers, but generally there's several $1,000s a year, and it just depends. And it depends on your health. So the healthier you are, the cheaper it is. It depends on if a husband and wife are both applying together, because if you apply together, you get a very drastic discount. And then the younger you are, the cheaper the policy is going to be. So if you're applying for a policy and you're 70 years old, it's going to be more expensive than if you applied when you're 55. And then the last thing I would add is just the more benefits that you want on your long-term care policy. So the quicker your policy begins to pay benefits, the higher the benefits are, and the more generous the amount that is paid, the more expensive it's going to be.
Charles, we have a very important question from Jack, and what he wants to know is, what is LTC with riders? Can you explain that?
Long-term care riders. So generally, that's when you have something like a life insurance policy or an annuity. So you had a different investment or a life insurance policy that you had that was serving a different purpose. And then you had a rider, which is just a fancy word for an option to add an additional benefit on that existing financial tool. And so then that will offer generally a a small supplement to long-term care, and it'll have a small benefit in it. So they vary greatly depending on what type of benefits you have and when, but they're always changing. But hopefully that answers your question.
Excellent. We have another question from Diane, and basically the question is exactly what is a Medi-Cal plan? And the question is, does the government somehow pays for a portion of the cost? I'll answer this one, Charles. I'll give you a break because you have a couple of more, like 4 more questions to answer. Diane, what we call a Medi-Cal plan is a plan that we prepare for you in order to have the government pay for a portion or all of the long-term care costs, particularly care costs when you're in a nursing home. But the most important part of the medical plan is that is designed to have you qualify for the government to pay for these costs, but it protects your assets. We have the ability to create a plan where we are able to protect your estate from these devastating expenses and have the government pay for a portion or all of those nursing home costs. This is a very, very, very important plan to think about. And this is something that obviously, if you cannot qualify for long-term care insurance, that you definitely need to talk to us, because we do this on a regular basis. Now, again, Charles, what is the cost of an appointment to discuss these things? What is it going to cost them?
Nothing. So we work on a value-based proposition. And what I mean by that is we don't charge for consultations. So if there is a way that we can help you, we believe that we can sit down and have a couple free discovery meetings where we go over your goals and objectives and what you're trying to do, and then whether we're a good fit and whether we can help you given your situation. And then we don't charge for those meetings at all. And then if you do decide to go forward with long-term care insurance or life insurance or other types of investments, we lay out the fee structure and the charges all up front. So there's no surprises or fees for that.
Great. Charles, one more question. If I am in a long-term care facility, I'm already in a skilled nursing facility, do I qualify for long-term care?
Generally speaking, no. And I say generally speaking only because there's always the exception. But generally, after you need long-term care, and once you're in a long-term care facility receiving that type of care, getting that insurance is an uphill battle and pretty close to impossible. And I only say pretty close because I had one instance where a client had broken their leg, their femur, and there were some complications, and they ended up going into a long-term care facility for a few months, and they had told me that they were interested in a long-term care policy. Long story short, they ended up having a full recovery. They were out of the assisted living facility, and then they ended up applying, and they were actually able to get coverage. But that is generally a rarity and not the norm, but it is possible, but not while you're there.
Charles, on the same question, I think Myra has also a response to that question. Myra, is that correct? I see here on the question and answer that you wanted, I think, to jump in and answer that question also.
I don't have that on mine, Robert.
Okay, we'll pass on then. The other question then, Charles, is for you, and that is, do life insurance companies add long-term care riders to existing policies, or do you have to buy a brand new life insurance policy?
Generally, they don't add riders to existing policies. A rider is generally something that's added to a policy at the time of purchase. And I say generally because if you have a policy that says you have the option to add this benefit later, then you do. But life insurance policies are just contracts between you and a life insurance company. So it's impossible to issue a statement that covers them all without reading every single one of them. But generally speaking, I've yet to see a policy that has a provision in it that allows you to add a rider after the policy is in force. It's generally something that you add to the life insurance when you're in the process of purchasing and acquiring the life insurance, not after it's already been placed.
Great. We have a special question and I will answer it right now. Sharon, I do not know the answer to this question, so I will pass it on to Charles. And the question is, what is the status of the lawsuit against CalPERS long-term care?
I have no idea.
Yeah. Sharon, we will get back to you on that. We will do the research and neither one of us knows what the situation is there, but we will find out. And if we can get the contact information, we'll be more than happy to answer the question. We have another question, and this one is, can we get more information on medical planning? I'll answer that. The answer is yes. However, it is so complicated and so, I'll call it unique to each family, that I would rather have you call us. I will be more than happy to get on the phone and talk to you personally about this because it's more complicated than giving you just a simple answer here on this particular webinar. So Lieta, I am more than happy to answer the question. If you give me a call or sign up with Myra to contact me, I'll be more than happy to go over with the details about the long-term care plan and it's all the details. And we have another question here from Jack. Jack says, hello. Jack again is asking a question. And the question is, does the medical plan allow you to choose the facility? The answer to that is yes, you can. Because if you qualify for Medi-Cal, you have to find a facility then that has Medi-Cal beds. So the answer is you can choose a facility. And generally, one of the steps that we encourage you to do is to seek a facility and evaluate the facility before you choose one. And here's another question for you, Charles. The question is, I've had cancer and in remission. I am 68 years old. Is long-term care possible for me?
Possible. It will be an uphill battle. I don't like to say no. I do like to just kind of fill out an informal questionnaire and then we just shop around to see what the underwriters tell us. But generally, it is more difficult if you've just recently had cancer and are recovering.
All right. I am looking at the Q&A chart and I do not see any more open questions. Charles and I want to thank you so much for joining us. And Charles and I are ready to answer any and other questions you might have. And again, I do encourage you because I see that most of the interest here, which is fantastic. I'm really happy to see that you have such an interest in long-term care insurance. And I really encourage all of you to contact Charles, meet with him and find out all the details because it is absolutely, in my opinion, super important as we get older to find a way to pay for this crisis that faces us as we get older. And therefore, again, we all want to thank you. It's been a great pleasure to be with you and appreciate you joining us.
Yes, it was a pleasure. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.